Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is depth. Well, it's a game in which I will make many puns about depth. That I can guarantee. I've promised them. There will be at least 2 during this video. This is a first-person shooter of sorts. An asymmetrical first-person shooter in which a team of 4 divers faces off against 2 sharks that will be played in third-person perspective. The sole mode of the game involves defending Steve, who will go to various areas on the map in order to unlock safes and gather treasure. You can also gather extra little bits of treasure around the map, if you so if you so desire, and that will allow you to buy extra gear as you go forward. Now, of course, sharks don't buy gear because they have nowhere to keep treasure. They have no pockets. It would be impractical. The sharks know what they're doing. So the sharks must kill the divers before they're able to complete their treasure-seeking mission. You begin with a very basic pistol, and you can upgrade your weapons and equipment throughout. And the hope is, of course, not to be horribly eaten by sharks. The video game. Now, the sharks can also upgrade themselves throughout the game, and they will be able to gain points depending on how many kills they get. And they get progressively more dangerous the longer the game goes on. And the way that the maps are designed is deliberately done in such a way that the levels get darker and darker and more dangerous. This is a game brought to you by Digital Confectioners. This game was in beta for a little while and then came out as I wouldn't say a full price release, it is $25. And it has a single game mode and about 6 maps. It also has an in-game progression system, as well as an out-of-game progression system, which allows you to unlock new weapons and special consumables the more that you play. Although what I will say about the progression is that it seems to have slowed down to a crawl. For the first few hours, I was getting fairly regular unlocks. I got this pistol, which is a nice little 5-barreled aquatic pistol, a little bit of an upgrade from the 4-barreled one that I got in the first place, so that was good. Oh, hello, someone's getting eaten horribly. Where's the shark? Ugh. He's dead. Alright, we're good. We're good. And I got a fast-firing rifle and a couple of other things. And then, well, the progression kind of stopped. It slowed down to something of a crawl, which is a little bit disappointing. I've also got shark things to unlock, but good luck unlocking any of those, because that would involve actually being able to play as a shark. And that's perhaps where the first big problem lies with the current state of depth. So, needless to say, lots of people want to play the shark. Unsurprisingly, because who the hell wouldn't want to play a shark hunting divers? That sounds like a great, really fun idea. And it is, as it turns out. It is a very fun idea. Problem is, the game's designed asymmetrically, so there are only 2 sharks to every 4 divers. And since people really want to play sharks right now, if you queue as a shark, you will probably never get a game. If you queue as random, you'll get a game, but you will always be the diver every single time. I have never, ever queued and been a shark. The only time I've been able to play a shark, and that's going to be the same thing in this video as well, because it's the only way I'm going to get to show it to you, is by actually running a bot match where I pick the shark in the first place. Oh god! Stab it, stab it, stab it. So that's a bit of a problem. It's not that the diver isn't fun to play. In fact, the diving team is a lot of fun to play. You have to be careful, you have to position yourselves in such a way that you can defend people if they get attacked by the sharks. Obviously, you want to try and save the person from the shark if possible, although that is a little bit difficult, as you can see. As soon as you get grabbed by the shark, you have a very short period of time before you get ripped to shreds, where you can stab the shark with the knife in a last-ditch effort to try and piss it off or at least damage it to some degree. And generally, it doesn't do a lot of damage, but if you're lucky, and with the help of your teammates, hello, you may be able to deal with the shark before it kills you. Possibly. Although it's fairly unlikely. This is a game where lightning reactions are the order of the day. Sharks are actually kind of glass cannons. If they get caught in the line of fire, they will die very quickly. But of course, if they catch a diver, the diver will be killed very quickly. Such is the way of it. Now, where? He's up there. Alright. Just want to place a sonar buoy here, just to try and give us a little bit more information. Now, the divers can kind of dart around the place and attempt to dodge, although it's not necessarily all that effective. But it does allow you to move a little bit quicker. You can also unlock something called the DPV, which is a little vehicle that will allow you to move an awful lot faster. But outside of that, you're trying to see the shark coming before it hits you, which is very difficult because this game relies on a very short draw distance. In fact, it's a game that really uses the short draw distance to its advantage. Draw distance is something that we talk about a lot when it comes to performance and port issues. A lot of bad ports have short draw distances and things like that because it's a cheap and easy trick in order to get more performance out of a game. You kill the draw distance, it means it's drawing objects within the world at a shorter distance, so that means it's drawing less stuff, which means the performance is higher. But this is a game where the draw distance is deliberately very, very low, or at least aesthetically it is. I couldn't say from a performance standpoint as to whether or not it's rendering stuff far away. In fact, I would probably speculate that it is, because this game does run into some performance issues from time to time that you might even notice in the video, where it kind of drops below 60 for no apparent reason. But this is a game that relies on darkness and shadow. It relies on not being able to see the shark darting out of the pitch black. And, in fact, it's how the sharks really get things done. If they go in straight away, then the chances are the shark is going to be destroyed fairly easily. But if they come in from the darkness, they come in from the eternal void that is the ocean, then chances are they'll be able to catch someone off guard before they realize what's happening and dart off with them, carry them away again into the darkness. And, frankly, not only is that a great game mechanic, but it also adds this incredible, tangible feeling of tension. Because you know the sharks are there. You can hear the heartbeat, which gives you kind of an indication that the sharks are around. You can see maybe the very short-range sonar buoys or flares detecting them. But ultimately, they're going to come out of the darkness. They're going to come out very fast. You have a very, very short time to react before they disappear again, and off he goes. We have no idea where he is now. He was able to take one of the divers and just run away. They disappear into the darkness and then set up for another attack. The sharks can also bash their way through a lot of terrain, which means that you're not safe pretty much ever, frankly, in this game. You will be consistently hunted. And that's a really awesome feeling, because that tension is absolutely phenomenal. Unfortunately, these people are not so phenomenal, but there you go. They get very, very angry, it would seem. Problem is that this is a game whereby you can let your team down quite easily, simply by dying a lot, because you end up feeding the opposing team, and you only have 30 tickets each, so teamwork is kind of essential, and there are ways to communicate, but ultimately, things happen so fast that communication makes very, very little difference, so it really is a case of just trying to sit in the least vulnerable position possible. Now, every now and again, you can take a risk to go and try and gain extra treasure, which will allow you to get extra equipment, but moving out on your own can be a bit of a risk, to say the least. Because, of course, if a shark catches you out in the open, the chances are you're going to die, unless you're very, very quick on the trigger. Sharks do die very, very fast, but if they grab you, well, you're dead. And, frankly, I think that's a fantastic little setup. It really does add that real sense of tension, and the gunplay and the combat in general, both for the shark and for the divers, is focused entirely on speed. You have got to be right on the ball all the time. You have to be hyper aware of what's going on all the time. Otherwise, you're dead. Alright, I'm going to grab a couple more sonar buoys. I would grab some mines, but what tends to happen with mines is they explode, and frankly, they don't necessarily kill a shark in one shot, but if a diver's nearby, the diver will die to the explosion. So I've seen teams put down too many mines, then end up dying to them repeatedly, which is not a particularly good thing, unfortunately. Alright, there's one nearby. Where is he? Let's toss down a bit of sonar. No, he's right there! Ugh. We are going to lose this one by the looks of it, which is a bit unfortunate. Ugh. Oh, no. He's right there. He's right over there. So far, you can probably tell that I'm enjoying this quite a bit, outside of my extremely rude teammates, but such is the way of things. So, what's wrong with it? Is there anything wrong with it? Well, there's a few things. We talked about performance, and I'll look at the options menu once we're out of this particular match. But every now and again, I've noticed on some levels that the performance of the game has some problems. It'll actually drop frame rate quite significantly. This seems to be a bigger problem for the shark, who seems to have a higher draw distance than the actual divers themselves. So I have a feeling that's got something to do with it. It's a little bit weird, because the game doesn't look incredible. I actually ended up disabling dynamic shadows just to get a bit of a frame rate boost. Bear in mind that I'm talking about a game that is running now on a GTX 980. which is, frankly, a pretty damn good card. And something that should be able to run a game like this without too much of a problem. Incidentally, as you can clearly see, I'm doing better than the guy that's claiming I'm so bad, but hey, there you go. That's quite amusing. In fact, I think I'm actually doing best on the team. Indeed I am. There you go. Big surprise there. Yes, I'm the one who's terrible, though. Alright. It can be relaxing and wonderful to demonstrate facts to the team. In front of 200,000 people, of course. But there you go. And that was... just... Oh my god. So angry. Look at this. Look at these guys. Best kill to death ratio on the entire team. I'm apparently the problem. Highest score on the entire team. I'm apparently the problem. Right. Facts are not the strong suit of these fellows, are they? But let's have a look at the options menu and talk a little bit about performance as I was mentioning there. Shall we go to settings? It's not a brilliant looking game. Like, shadows-wise and lightings-wise, it's definitely atmospheric. But if you look at things like overall texture quality, animation quality, pretty much not there. You know, it's a distinctly indie experience when it comes to overall presentation. But outside of that, the options menu is reasonably good. I also like the fact that they use this sort of visual representation as to what each option is going to do. It's like, that's going to increase the quality a lot, but it's going to knock down the performance a little bit. Compared to things like lighting, it's like, oh, if you turn on dynamic shadows, it's going to have a really big performance impact. It's actually quite a nice little visual representation of what's going on there. And you got things like upsampling if you wish to use that. I currently have that turned off. And then you've got things like dynamic decals, which you can turn on or off. Motion blur. You know, this might be one of the only games where I think motion blur might be quite effective and atmospheric, but I'm not going to turn the damn thing on out of principle. And then we've got ambient occlusion, ambient creatures you can turn on or off, and things like that. Performance-wise, it has most of the options that you would expect, but I have noticed inconsistency in that performance. It seems to be on a map-by-map basis, and turning off the dynamic shadows did help a little bit, but sometimes it drops below 60, and I don't really think that the game's visual quality fully justifies that, honestly, so I'm not really sure what's going on with it. I'm not the only one to find that as a problem either. I did find some mentions of the forums and on my Twitter. It doesn't seem to support SLI, but frankly, I'm on a GTX 980 on a brand new computer. There's no way this should be dipping below 60. It's really that simple. So just beware, you may have to tweak quite a lot of these options to get an acceptable frame rate. Outside of that, the game does have field of view, which is good. It goes all the way up to 120, which I did put on because, frankly, you need as much visibility in this game as possible. Because if a shark comes in from the side out of your field of vision, then, frankly, you are going to be in a pretty bad state. So there you go. You might just maybe want to try and crank that up as high as it'll go. You can also turn off head sway, which is nice for those of you that find that that gives you motion sickness, and turn gore on or off. So if you do not wish to see dismembered bodies all over the water, then that is an option for you. Separate audio sliders for everything, and the ability to turn on or off voice over IP, which is probably great, because those idiots from the previous game were most likely shouting at me for no goddamn good reason. Outside of that, fully rebindable keys and mouse sensitivity. I turned this up a little bit. The default look sensitivity is a little bit low. I am just using my mouse's onboard sensitivity tweaks to make that better, but I had to crank it up a little bit to really make it acceptable, so there you go. Alright, let's play as the shark, and then we'll kind of come to our conclusions. I've got to play a bot match, because, again, there is no way in a million years to actually get the shark if you're going matchmaking, because everyone is trying to get the shark. So you'll be stuck in there for 20 minutes. You might not even get a game. It's just a complete and total pain in the arse. All right. So this will be the same game mode as previous. There is only one game mode, and it's a very accomplished game mode, frankly. I think it's a very good, solid game mode. But it's the only one. And I think if we're going to talk about the problems that this game has, outside of the minor performance glitches, it would be the fact that it really just doesn't have a huge amount of content. Now, I praise the fact that they've got a bunch of unlocks for the divers and things like that, although I do feel that the unlocks are a lot slower than they should be in terms of the progression. According to Steam, played this for 6 hours. I'd probably say that's been about 5 hours of actual gameplay, and I seem to have slowed down to a crawl when it comes to getting unlocks, which is not particularly brilliant. I'd certainly like to unlock things a hell of a lot faster so that I've got a little bit more gameplay variety. But we are still dealing with only one game mode. Now, the game mode is nicely nuanced. It, I think, takes some inspiration from Left 4 Dead. It certainly takes some inspiration from Killing Floor. And it keeps the divers moving. which is good because that means that they have to only set up temporary defensive positions. It also means that the consumables aren't overpowered, because if you place a bunch of sonar stuff, well, you can't move that sonar stuff and you can't move the mines either. So you end up in a situation where if you overinvest defending one area, when the Steve robot moves along, it's going to be moving out of the range of all of those lovely defensive consumables. So they're going to have to set them up all over again. And there's that period of vulnerability when you're transitioning from area to area. So it's a nice little idea. It's well balanced. I think the timing and the pacing on the levels is pretty much perfect. It doesn't outstay its welcome, which I definitely dig a great deal. There we go. And that was not particularly effective, was it? I'm not particularly good at the shark, because this is only my third time playing him, because of course I can't play him in multiplayer, because someone else is already doing it, which is a little bit of a pain in the arse, but never mind. I like the fact that the shark can bash through a bunch of terrain. In fact, a lot of the terrain is destructible, which means that you open up new attack routes and paths. And it's also a great way of freaking the divers out, because of course they hear the crumbling rocks around them, which is in itself just kind of absolutely wonderful. I need to unlock some abilities, because frankly my shark is not particularly effective at the moment. I'm going to see if I can sneak around behind them and maybe grab one of them there. Stay out of the range of the consumables. We don't like that. There we go. Carry him off into the distance where his friends can't help him. And there we go. Lovely. Okay, that was much better. I'm going to try and find a seal to eat so that I can regenerate my health here. The controls of the shark are actually surprisingly fluid, gotta say, and there are some nice unlocks later that allow you to do things like curve your lunge, which makes you a lot harder to hit instead of running straight into the barrels of the guns. So the game mode is good. It's got a lot going for it, but needless to say, I'm gonna have to maybe make the complaint that the game lacks a little bit of, well, depth. The shark, for instance, has really one attack. And while it's a good attack, you know, and the game works well with it, it's still just one attack. And I'd love to see some unlockable, activatable abilities that would really give the shark a wider skill set. As it stands, pretty much everything is a passive, which compared to the divers is a little bit annoying, because you do have a bunch of different skill sets you can grab with the divers. But with the shark, well, they all kind of play in exactly the same way. And I think I would prefer to see a little bit more nuance to the way that the shark actually works. It's not to say the shark is unenjoyable, it's actually fantastic fun to play, but it is just doing the same thing over and over again. Oh, this is terrible. Ah. And if you mess up as the shark, then like I said, you are a glass cannon, you will die immediately. It does feel like you are very much an assassin. We're gonna grab Hangry, there we go, because that actually gives me a massive boost of energy early on in the game, which lets me get right back into the fight nice and quickly. There we go. That is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Okay. Tell me where are they? Okay, we can maybe bash our way through here. Oh, no, this is a bad idea. Now, you might be wondering why I'm actually wiggling my mouse around. You actually have to shake your mouse around in order to shake a diver to death, and the faster you do it, the more damage you do. So, I guess that's a little bit annoying from the spectator standpoint, but it is there. I think that, again, the biggest problem the game has is just a lack of content. 6 maps, 2 factions, yes, a lot of unlockables available, but still only one game mode. And it's a good game mode, but it's only one game mode, and they're asking for $25 for this thing, which for some people is going to be a pretty hard sell, because they're going to be saying, well, how much longevity does this game really have then? And it would be hard for me to say, well, it's got loads of it. But we are still in a situation where a lot of people really love games that only have one game mode. They'll play Counter-Strike on Dust till the end of time. They'll play Dota. They'll play League of Legends on a single map in a single game mode. But I think it would be hard to argue that this game somehow has more depth than those games, because it doesn't. You know, that's one game mode where they put so much depth into it that you could drown a small island nation. In depth, well, that's really not the case, unfortunately. That doesn't mean the game is bad, by no means. It's, for what it is, it's absolutely fantastic, but as a value proposition for some people, while it is thematically fantastic, and I really feel that it mixes the deathmatch genre with a little bit of Left 4 Dead style asymmetry, and a little bit of horror as well. Oh, it's a very tense game. There is a genuine horror element to it. Let's not pretend that sharks hunting divers isn't potentially terrifying. And the addition of effective ambient sounds and the way that the sharks move and just the fight or flight, kill or be killed nature of this game and just how fast everything is make it something of a multiplayer horror deathmatch. And I think it's very effective in that role, frankly. And it's a wonderful theme, something that hasn't really been explored all that much, and it works so very well, because both the divers and the sharks play in a very, very different way, and they're both reasonably well fleshed out, although, again, as I would say, I think that the sharks really could use a little bit more. The divers have so much cool kit they can play with, and the sharks... well, you lunge and you grab someone and you eat them. And really, that is about it. I'd love different ways to be able to freak out the divers. That would be absolutely fantastic. If they could add a few abilities which were solely designed to scare and intimidate the divers into making mistakes, I think that would be wonderful to add. It's not that there aren't a bunch of really cool passives, but that's all they are. Passives. And perhaps that's not quite enough to really keep people interested. Thankfully, since you barely ever get to play the sharks, I guess that's not too big of a problem, is it? Not too big of a problem. I can safely say that right now, in the state that depth is in, it's certainly something that I like to dive into every now and again. And I usually have a really, really good time with it every time I do it. The games are nicely paced, they go on for just long enough, they never really outstay their welcome. The map variety is reasonable. It's certainly, there's not a huge selection of maps, but the maps that they have created are fairly lengthy, and they've got a lot going for them, and I love the addition of destructible terrain, and the fact that each one of them kind of escalates as things get more and more tense, and divers' lives are extinguished, and the Steve slowly moves on and becomes kind of more and more vulnerable as it goes. There's a lot to be said for that. And based on the one game mode that it has, the game mode is superbly executed. Really, really well done. And the game feels balanced as well, frankly. Admittedly, if you have bad divers or bad sharks, then it's going to be fairly one-sided. If you have very, very angry divers who inexplicably get mad that the guy at the top of the table is dying more than they would prefer, then it could be perhaps a little bit less of a pleasant experience, but people are going to get mad one way or the other, aren't they? Regardless, depth is a really cool concept, and it's very, very well executed. I hope that they continue to add content to it, because if they do, then I have no real doubt that depth will be a multiplayer favorite for some people. I think it would also be absolutely fantastic, of course, with friends. The 4v2 setup works very, very well. Apparently, I got my arse beaten by the AI shark. I'm not much of a shark player, I've got to say at this point. And I've had a lot of fun with it, and it feels like a really unique experience and something that you can't really find elsewhere. Sure, you can see some similarities here and there to games like the forthcoming Evolve, games like Left 4 Dead, games like Alien vs. Predator, for instance, but depth sits on its own and says, yeah, this is a little niche that I've carved within this fairly rare subgenre for myself, and frankly, I do what I do very, very well. It's bare bones. It doesn't have a real single player. It's got no campaign of any description. It has a limited number of maps. It has a limited number of roles. And of course, it only has one game mode. That's going to put off people, I would imagine, at a $25 price tag. But I say, don't let that put you off if it happens to go on sale, which it invariably will at some point. This would be a game that I think would be a no-brainer at $10. At $25, people are going to have to consider, well, do I really like the theme enough to justify giving this a bash? I hope that you do, because I think it's pleasantly original, and it's one of those few multiplayer games where a genuine feeling of tension is nicely generated through the game mechanics, through the aesthetic, and through the theme. It's really, really strongly put together. This is a team that evidently had a vision and was able to execute it to the best of their ability, and the end result was pretty much exactly what I would have expected about a game with sharks versus divers. But it is perhaps lacking a little depth. Ladies and gentlemen, my name has been TotalBiscuit, taking a look at depth, available on Steam for $25 or your regional equivalent. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.